and good evening, guys. It is me, Missy Jessy, and this is going to be a very interesting subject, and it's very near and dear to my heart, which I'll explain later. You know, as we do our introduction, I have to think that, history remembers things, and history tries to forget, but then, and only then, these stories refuse to stay buried. I am here with the wonderful Ginger Mystic, who is my close sister from another Mister. And I am so excited. And I will tell you guys, I'm not going to lie, but I have been sweating like you know what in church.
Don't say it out loud.
I mean, I can, but I am going to happily introduce the wonderful author and critically acclaimed to my heart and everybody else's, S.A. Sizemore, sorry. And we're going to call her Shelley. Love Shelley. And she's going to be here to talk about her wonderful book, The Whispers of the Pale Witch. And I have got chills, you guys. I think my ancestors are coming through. We finally, after 330 plus years, our families come together and talk about everything.
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So here we are.
I mean, yeah, I'm here to talk about like a little bit of the history, and then we're going to talk about her wonderful book.
Yeah.
And, I have to share something maybe towards later in why we are so connected. It's kind of crazy, but tell me about Salem.
Yeah, I just got back from Salem. I went I went last summer. I know. I went last summer. I first went back as an adult in 2019, and the very first time I went there I was a teenager. At the time I had no idea I was a Salem witch trials descendant. I didn't find out until 2 weeks before I left in 2019. I was doing some research for something completely different. I was like, you know what? I've never really looked at these two great grandmas. Let me see where they come from. And I was like, oh my God, they both come from Salem. And then I found out that I'm an Ingresol descendant. And anybody who knows anything about Salem knows that the Ingersols were one of the they were one of the more respected families in Salem, but they can also be one of the more infamous. And so the House of the Seven Gables is an attraction in Salem, and that house its actual name is the Turner Ingersoll House.
Yes.
And so my cousins own that house, and Nathaniel Ingresol, Deacon Nathaniel Ingresol, was heavily involved in the Salem witch trials. My family, my direct family, lived in Salem town. So we actually, when we talk about Salem, we're talking about two different places. We're talking about Salem town, which was the urban area and heavily involved with the shipping industry. And then we're talking about Salem village, which is now Danvers. And that was very agricultural. And there were a lot of farming families out there, and they had been there for a while. My 12th great grandfather, Richard Ingresol, moved out there to farm. And his youngest son, Nathaniel, stayed out there after Richard died, and he took over his property. And Nathaniel's sisters stayed out there, the Walcotts and the Holtons. And my family stayed in town, and they were mariners. So they were involved in the shipping industry. And my 9th great grandfather was a cooper, which was a barrel maker. So that was also involved with the shipping industry. And so it's very fascinating learning about them. And then I'm also via my other great grandmother related to the Cooks and the Williams. John Cook Sr. was a constable, and he was involved as a constable during the witch trials. And he was one of the male jurors that was assigned to do the witch mark search on the male accused on June 2nd. Excuse me. And then Marjorie Williams, who was the sister-in-law of Deacon Nathaniel Ingresol, so I'm kind of related to him twice. She was one of the matrons who was assigned to do the witch mark search on the women.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
So one thing we have to understand is that these witch hunts were going on for a while in Europe. Yeah. And they hadn't really happened very much in America. There were a few instances here and there, but things got kind of crazy in 1692 for a lot of different reasons. And it just ended up being the perfect tinderbox for something really horrible to happen.
Yeah.
And it happened over the course of 1692 into 1693. But the part that we focus on the most is what happened over the summer because of the executions that took place. And they were the first time anybody had been executed in Salem. So it was a big deal. And where did you want me? Do you want me to begin at like what my theory is of how it kind of started, or like?
I mean that the history is really, for those who have not really learned a lot about the history, they do whatever is through the movies or whatever.
Right.
There's actual history. Yeah. I mean,
unfortunately, but yeah. And the Crucible, I mean, I think the Crucible is our entry point a lot of the times. And the Crucible, Miller took the events of 1692 and tweaked them to talk about things that were happening in 1950. Yeah. And so names are turned around, and he did this whole thing with Mary Warren and John Proctor that probably was not a thing, and it just made it a little ooky. And I'm at a point now where I don't even know if we should actually teach the Crucible anymore.
Right.
Because I think it skews things way too much, and it doesn't really tell us what actually happened. So let's start with, so the village decided that they were going to build their own church separate from Salem town, because it took them about an hour and a half to get into town, and they were required to go to services every Sunday.
Right.
And so Nathaniel Ingresol,
every day too, didn't they?
No, they had
just Sundays.
It was just Sundays for 8 hours. There was a break.
Oh, thank you.
And then Thursdays they would have a lecture day, and that would switch back and forth between different communities. And that was less time. That was like an hour or 2 hours. It was generally during market day, so people were already in town. It typically happened in town, because that was a little bit easier for people. And then, but sometimes it would happen out in the village as well. And so Nathaniel was instrumental in getting this church built. He wanted this church built, and he made sure that it was built right down the street from his house. And he started a tavern, or what was called an ordinary back then, because it was a place where you could not only get a meal and a tankard of cider or beer, because that's how you were able to drink water at the time, but it was also a place where you could stay overnight. And he was allowed to get a license in order to help support the men that were coming into the village to help build the church building, the carpenters. So they did that. They got the church built. I think it was in 1679, I believe. But within that short period of time between 1679 and about 1689, they had gone through 3 ministers. Everybody kept arguing over how they felt about the minister, and they finally, they're at a point where they don't have a minister anymore. And in 1689, they hear this man in Boston giving a lecture, Reverend Samuel Parris. He's not actually a reverend yet. He wants to be. He was a failed businessman in Barbados and came back to Boston. And being a minister was actually a pretty good paying job. A decent salary for people at that time was about 30 pounds a year. Those were skilled laborers. Ministers made 60 pounds a year.
Dang.
So it was good money. So he wanted to get this gig. So they hear him speak. They decide to make him an offer. But for a community that kept going through ministers, they give him a sweetheart deal. They give him 70 pounds a year. They give him the property that the parsonage is on in perpetuity for his son.
Wow.
So it's kind of like they're trying to lock him in so they can't like get rid of him.
Wow.
And things seem to be okay at first. He promises Nathaniel that he's going to make him a deacon. He also promises Edward Putnam that he's going to make him a deacon, but he kind of waits a couple years and doesn't actually give them that.
Yeah.
And it's not until things start going south that he finally gives them the deaconships. And what happened was the church committee decided that they voted in a new church committee, and this new church committee did not like Paris. He was an asshole. He would call people out in the pews during services and talk about how bad they were, as opposed to having a private conversation or something. And he was keeping an enemies list. I mean, he was just a dick. And so Francis Nurse is assigned to collect his dues, his salary. He doesn't do it for months. And so the Ingersols and the Putnams are having to pay Paris's salary. And so Paris wants to lock them in. And so he finally gives the deaconships to Nathaniel and Edward to make sure they're his guys. So we start getting into the winter 1691, heading into 1692. Paris is still not getting paid enough. He's freaking out. He's worried that he's going to get let go. He doesn't have enough firewood, or he's complaining that he doesn't have enough firewood. And so he's wound up like a top.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to January, and his daughter, Betty Paris, starts acting weird. Her symptoms are she's flinching. She's staring off into space. She's crawling under the table to hide, and she's making odd noises. To me, these are the symptoms of an abused child.
Exactly what I was thinking.
That.
And we know that Paris was using what they referred to at the time as correction on his household, because Tituba says that he has beaten her. And male heads of household at the time were allowed to use corporal punishment on their wives and their servants, enslaved people, and their children. So Betty, because she is ill and they can't figure out what's going on with her, she gets out of doing her chores, going to services on Sunday. Abigail Williams, her cousin, who was about 11 years old. Abigail's 9. Betty is 9. Abigail is 11.
Okay. There you go.
And so Abigail's seeing this, and all of a sudden, she starts having symptoms.
Convenient.
Betty, as things progress, Betty ends up getting pulled out of the house. Paris takes her to a friend in town, and miraculously, her symptoms improve. And she is not part of the afflicted girls going forward. So, okay, so we've got these girls, they're having these weird symptoms, and it's starting to spread. Ann Putnam Jr., a neighbor, is also starting to get these symptoms. Elizabeth Hubbard, the daughter of Dr. Griggs, is starting to get these symptoms. And they call Dr. Griggs in and kind of go, well, what's going on? What is this? He can't figure it out. So he decides it's witchcraft, that they're bewitched. Yep. So what does that mean at the time? At the time, they believed that the devil, they felt they had conquered the devil in Europe, but he had followed them to the New World, and that this was going to be his last stand. And they also believed that the devil couldn't harm you directly, that he needed human beings to do that for him. And those people were witches and warlocks.
Yeah. Well, weren't the Puritans very, very very locked into their religion. Like,
yes. Well, they were separate. They were actually separatists. So they didn't like this new Anglican church that had broken off from the Catholic Church, and they still felt it was too Catholic. And so they started pulling way back. And so they weren't into birthdays. They wouldn't celebrate marriages. They did throw a huge party for funerals because to them you were going back to God. And so, like, there was a huge wine budget for funerals. It was outrageous. Like, there was one time
I'm in the wrong time for funerals.
For funerals, it was weird. So they would sit in the pews, and it was very fire and brimstone kinds of sermons. And this is where the initial idea of being saved comes from. And so you had a hierarchy within the church. So it was, you had these people that had professed that they were saved. They would become members of the church. They would have to pay a higher due, generally. They were allowed to have communion. And they were kind of like the in crowd, the clique. Then you had the rest of the congregation who was obliged to go to services every Sunday, whether they wanted to or not. They were actually people that would go around on Sunday and round people up and find them and bring them to the church.
Wow.
And all of these people are assigned a specific place in the pews. While I was in Salem, I went to the library and they have a history room, and I was looking through all of the town documents and finding things about my ancestors. And it was like, this person got assigned this pew because somebody died. And it was just like, it's like all these crazy things about like where they were sitting.
Yeah.
And women whose husbands did not work and who had a decent amount of children were allowed to sit further up in the pews. So there were like all these crazy things. The servants would sit up in the galleries. And servants were a mix of indentured white folks and enslaved indigenous and Black folks. And Tituba, we have now come to understand, was actually indigenous. If you look at the trial documents, they even say that. They refer to her as an Indian woman. And there are other women that were of African descent who are given the surname Black, and it specifically calls out that they are African descent. So they're making that distinction in the trial documents.
Interesting.
And, you know, they're still having to deal with the fact that they are enslaved to these white men, but there are these distinctions happening. And as we shift into the latter part of the 1600s, indigenous women are even more vulnerable because they start making this shift where they only wanted to enslave people of African descent because they were easy to identify. It's a horrific concept that's what they were that was going on in their heads.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Native American folks, they referred to them as Tawny Devils. I'm Cherokee and Chickahominy also, so this is always complicated for me to talk about the two sides of my family.
Right.
But they started putting bounties on indigenous folks' heads. So Tituba and John Indian being in Paris's household, it starts becoming very uncomfortable. And with all
because
of this,
she was a servant for him, right? Tituba was his servant.
She was an enslaved person. She was probably captured in what is now Venezuela and then brought to Barbados. He bought her in Barbados.
Right.
And then brought her and John Indian and also an African enslaved boy up to Boston when he came back. And so he brings them. For some reason, we don't know what happened to the boy, but Tituba and John Indian are still very much in his household during 1692.
Yeah.
And so it's not surprising that Tituba ends up being one of the first persons accused because she is one of the most vulnerable people in the village.
Right. Well, and she also, I think she brought a lot of her culture with her to help get her through this enslavement. And so people would look at that and say, oh, you're not going by our ways, and that's not okay to go grab a herb to soothe your stomach.
So this is the interesting thing. Tituba and the other Black women that were accused, none of them practiced witchcraft. Witchcraft was not an indigenous thing. It was also not necessarily an African thing. And almost all of the things that they talk about around this time that are witchcraft-like are from Europe. It's all these European women. It was kind of like this subversive thing with all the women at the time. They all kind of knew these things. They all kept a garden. They all had herbal remedies and things that they were doing.
Yep.
And then they also had these folk things that they were doing, like divination things and puppets and these things that kind of came with them, even though they weren't supposed to be doing them. It was all kind of this subversive thing. Mary Sibley with the witch cake and trying to suss out.
I was just going to say that.
Right.
She's an Ingresol. She is related to the Ingersols. Her husband's sister married Jonathan Walcott. Who was Mary Walcott's mother.
Yeah.
So they're all, but they all, when I looked at the map and I started looking at where the Holtons were, where Nathaniel was, where the Walcotts were, the Hutchinsons, all of them are right around the meeting house. All of them are there. They're all, that was their enclave all around there. They went, and their properties went all the way down to Rebecca Nurse's property. And so that was shocking to me when I started to realize all my family members were all right in that same spot. And that was by design.
Right there.
Nathaniel wanted it that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep them close.
Wow. That is crazy. So with all the history, let's talk a little bit about your book and kind of all the pieces that you pulled together for this wonderful, I love it. You guys, please check it out. But tell us how
that happened.
How does all this happen to create this wonderful story?
So my background is in script writing, not novel writing. I had written a teleplay years ago, probably almost about 20 years ago now. And it took place in Salem. And it was about rival covens and this mysterious cabinet. And I kind of shelved it. I didn't really do anything with it per se at the time. Life kind of got in the way, and I just kind of put it on a shelf. And then COVID happened, and I got furloughed, and I was home, and I was like, let me clean my office, which is now a disaster again. And
that's why
I pulled this thing off. There's a picture that I think I just posted it the other day, and with a totally different post, but it's a picture of me with my feet and just all these scripts laid out. And I took that at the time when I pulled them all out, and I literally picked this one up and I went, I want to do something with this. And so I had just found out about the being a descendant, and I was like, how can I weave these things together? And so I started working on an outline. I was one of the first people that got brought back to work from furlough, so I had to stop. I was so mad. And then in 2023, I had still been outlining. I take a lot of time researching outlining before I even write a draft. And I had enough information at that time, and I literally blew out a draft probably in about 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And then I spent many months editing and trying to figure it out. And then I was like, well, I've got this thing and it seems to be cool. And let me see if I can sell it. I've never written a novel, but I seem to have written something. So let's try it. And I wasn't getting a lot of hits right away. And I kind of had to keep tweaking it. And I was kind of fixing it and polishing it a little bit more. And then all of a sudden I found out about, so this is the crazy thing, that how I got my publisher. they were doing these pitch fests on what was once Twitter. and they would do these.
I've only been on there one time in my life.
And these things don't happen on Twitter anymore because now it's all gone to hell. But they were doing these things it was called Dark Pit. And you would literally pitch once every hour and just throw out pitches. And so I did this. And by the end of the day, I had 3 agents that wanted to talk to me and 3 publishers. And that's how I got Rowan Prose.
Wow.
And
awesome.
Yeah. And Rowan Prose is female owned. And so I went with them. And
that was awesome.
Yeah. And then I was like, all right, well, I have this book and I have 2 more I can write. So I just kept going. And you know, you find out a little bit about the ancestors in this first book, but then you're going to learn a lot more in book 2 and then book 3.
Wow.
So good.
Oh, the shadows come out. That's for sure.
Yes.
I'm really excited to see book 2 come out. Get to read it.
Book 2 is really good. I feel like book 1 is good, but book 2 is really good because I finally figured it out. I figured out how to write a novel, and so it was much easier to write that one. Book 3 has been a little trickier because I'm having to pull together all the loose ends and make sure I'm covering everything. And so that one's been a little bit trickier plot-wise, but the heart is still there. You're going to need a box of tissue for book 3. I'm just warning you.
Oh, man.
I know. Book 2 too, but book 3, there's going to be you need a box of tissue.
Crazy.
Let's talk about the Beckett family in your book. What made you want to create a family whose history is so deeply intertwined with Salem? Like, I know from your lineage, but I mean...
So the Becketts are the descendants of Bridget Bishop.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found at one point, my first cousin 9 times removed is Elizabeth Ingresol Beckett. She is buried at Charter Street Cemetery. And she married John Beckett, who was Bridget Bishop's second great-grandson. This is extraordinary because Nathaniel was a witness to all of Bridget Bishop's indictments during her trial. And I wanted to clash these 2 families together because of that, and how I wanted my main character to be descended from both of them. And what does that mean? And apparently I'm a little weird because I am only on the accusing side of my lineage. I didn't have anybody that was like accused. I was like, can't I find just somebody?
Just one.
Just just a little.
But there are people in the Nurse family and in a couple of the other families that intertwined accuser and accused, and it was almost like it was like this shared trauma that they experienced. And a couple generations later, it's kind of like they needed each other. And so I found that super fascinating. And it also, with my dual ancestry, with being Native American ancestry and colonizer ancestry, those are 2 things that are hard to reconcile. And so it's kind of a way for me to play with that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that kind of answers, my next question too. It's like, what would you tell your readers in this book? Obviously you want to find the secrets for themselves, right?
Yeah,
you want them to discover themselves.
I'm trying to hold back some things, and I'm giving you a couple secrets right now, but there's things about Kylie and her family that I kind of want my readers to experience firsthand. I don't want to blow that for them, but it is very much her learning about this world. Kylie has not lived in Salem. She was born there, but her father took her away from Salem for certain reasons. And she is trying to learn about her family, and in particular wants to learn about her mother who disappeared. And so she's hoping by going back to Salem and reconnecting with her great aunt, who's kind of been like a grandmother to her, that she's going to finally get those answers. But sadly, Hester dies at the very beginning of the book.
Yeah.
I'm not really spoiling too much when I say that.
Right.
And so she's kind of still lost. She inherits her great aunt's house, which has been in the family for generations, but she doesn't really know that much about them. And so she's finding these people in town that she's starting to interconnect with, and finding family members she didn't know about, and learning all of these secrets that she had no idea, and is like, kind of like, do I want to stay here? Like, is it
Right.
like,
I really
I think
want to
it's,
be
you
here.
know, it starts getting really complicated, and a little more than she felt that she was getting herself into. But she also, she got a job that she really wanted. She was really wanting to be a forensic photographer, and she was able to do that by moving to Salem. And so she's kind of has made some roots there, and she's finding out the roots that she already had that she didn't quite know about.
you know,
Yeah.
there's a kind of an intersection there for me that I can see. Like, so Kylie and what she's experiencing is kind of like a piece of you kind of experiencing your history and what
Yeah,
you
and
learn about
finding
too. I
out.
can see
Yeah.
how that connection is there. That's
Yeah,
very
and
interesting.
it was like me kind of, I wanted the reader, but it's also for the reader. It's for the reader to kind of ease into this and understand it, and have an opportunity to understand what the history of the witch trials, but also what is witchcraft today, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because that was the thing that fascinated me about Salem when I went there. I didn't see it as much in the 80s, but when I came back as an adult, the fact that, this place that was so awful to people that were supposedly witches that weren't, although there were probably a few people that were practicing what we would call folk magic, or the cunning
Mhm.
folk.
Yeah.
But that now it's so tolerant of people that are pagans, are witches, Wiccans, and there are about 30 covens at the moment in Salem.
Oh, wow.
It's like the script has been flipped
Yes,
300
yeah,
years later.
and it's super gay friendly, which is so fun for my wife and I. When we go, we feel very comfortable when we're there, and it's just amazing that it's done this, 180.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I wanted to capture that, and I wanted to capture. I kind of have to walk this crazy tightrope, right? Because
Right.
these people that Kylie gets to meet are witches. They are Wiccans,
Mhm.
but not. How do I walk that tightrope without harming the people that were innocent, that were accused of witchcraft back in 1692, and not
Right.
step on them, and be respectful of that, right?
Right. Of their
Mhm.
So
memories.
that's hard. It was tricky, and I always have to be mindful of that as I'm going along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that it's kind of like that thing in high school or grade school, where you have people who are at the end of the line and somebody tells like a whole sentence, and by the time it gets to you, the whole thing is flipped. And during your research, you found a lot of information that was definitely flipped and
It was
definitely,
hidden. Yeah, it was,
yeah.
I think that happened because the Ingersolls were so respected. And you kind of see them getting a freebie. And part of it's because of all the surnames. It was really easy to call out the Putnams because it was all these Putnam men. But with the Ingersolls, it's really just Nathaniel, who is the only Ingersoll man who is filing a complaint and involved in the trials. And then it's the Walcotts and the Holtons and all these other. So they kind of hide. And then in the 1850s, you get Charles Upham, who's kind of the first person who really tries to write a history of what happened. And he is way too complimentary of the Ingersolls. He talks about them like they're gods. And I'm reading his book, and after I had already gone through the trial transcripts, and I'm like, no. They can't.
Right?
This is
Wrong.
not real.
Yeah, you're like, no, this is not right.
It's way too one way. And so they weren't perfect. They but that made it even harder when they got involved. When Nathaniel jumped into this, it freaked people out, because for the most part in March, most of the accusations were being done either by Paris or Paris leaning people and the Putnams. And the Putnams were always complaining about things, so people were kind of like, yeah, whatever. So they were interested in it. And so they were kind of like, all right, whatever, we'll go look. Hawthorne and Corwin go out there like, all right, we'll check this out and see what this is about. Ooh, this is kind of weird and scary. And then on April 4th, Nathaniel Ingersoll and his nephew, who was only a couple years younger than him, they were more like brothers, Jonathan Walcott, they go to town and they file a complaint. And it's against Elizabeth Proctor and Sarah Cloyce. Sarah Cloyce was the sister of Rebecca Nurse, and she had gotten up in the middle of service, I think the Sunday before that, and was very angry because Paris, in the middle of the service, basically is gloating that they caught Rebecca Nurse as a witch. And so Sarah gets up, storms out. The door either catches in the wind and slams shut, or she slammed the door shut. Nathaniel would have had a front row seat to this. And the meeting house wasn't that big. It was about 36 feet, I believe, lengthwise. So it was pretty intimate space. And Elizabeth Proctor, interesting, just got a tavern license the year before, the same year that Nathaniel's tavern license was either taken away, expired, or he let it go.
Oh, I read about there was a conflict with his licensing for his tavern.
I think that might be and I haven't been able to find that out. So if you find that, let me know, because that makes sense. It makes more sense that it was a conflict, because he was only supposed to have that license while they were building the church. And so he kind of had it a lot longer than he needed it.
Yeah.
But when the trials start, Hawthorne directs everybody to send the accused to Nathaniel's tavern, because he was also a lieutenant in the militia, and he had the ability to feed them and take care of them in his now closed up ordinary. And so he makes the equivalent of, I think, something like $25,000 during a few months during the trials.
Wow. While he's housing everybody and keeping them locked up. Yeah.
And feeding the magistrates and everybody that was coming into Salem Village. And so it's interesting that the one person he accuses is probably the person that got his tavern license.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
That's when things change. Hawthorne and Corwin freak out, and they don't immediately arrest Proctor and Cloyce. They go to the Massachusetts government and go, whoa, this is getting a little out of hand. Nathaniel Ingersoll is now involved. We need more guidance on whatever this is. And it takes them a week. They finally issue the warrant. They arrest them, but they don't bring them to the village. They take them into town. And they do the questioning in the big meeting house in town, and all of the Massachusetts Bay government shows up. And Danforth is the assistant governor at the time. Phipps is in London trying to get a new charter for the colony. And so Danforth is also freaking out, because he's like, I got left in charge and all this crazy is going on while everybody's away. And the girls during this particular questioning, because everybody's shown up, give their performance of a lifetime. Oh my God. It is off the charts. They're talking about people like touching them and they're on fire, and people like Elizabeth Proctor is up in the rafters and all this insane stuff. And that freaks out the government. And now you have this exponentially charged thing that happens and it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And isn't there like a specific type of evidence that they use?
Spectral evidence, and they weren't supposed to do that.
Right.
So the girls, this is where I start getting into some interesting testimony. There was a moment I was of course I was interested in anything Ingresol. So there's one particular piece of testimony that about an event that happened in late March. And they would have these prayer circle things for the girls, and they would have them at the Ingersols because they had a big great room. I think that might have been where they originally did church services before they built the meeting house. And during one of these, William Raymond comes up to Hannah Ingersoll, Nathaniel's wife, and says, I heard Goody Proctor might be accused next. And she's like, no, that's not a thing. On cue, one of the girls points in the corner and goes, Goody Proctor, she's harming me. She's over there. And Hannah Ingersoll, which is kind of ballsy considering that Martha Corey did something similar not too long ago and then she got arrested. Hannah Ingersoll goes, oh, stop that. You are lying. There's nobody there. So she's calling him out on the spectral evidence.
Wow.
Right.
The girl said, so she's not a relation. She says, Goody Ingersoll. They don't say who the girl is, but she says, oh, Goody Ingersoll, don't mind us. Just give us a little bit of sport. I'm sorry.
What? Wow.
I think that's Abigail Williams all over.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And
oh my gosh.
So that's a horrifying moment that never gets taken care of in the trials. They just kind of ignore it. But that was the thing of spectral evidence. It was that when the girls were seeing something, and it wasn't just the girls, there were some adults that were saying it too. Right. Ann Putnam Sr. was saying it as well. And they were saying that they were seeing something that nobody else could see, or feeling something that nobody else could feel. And they weren't supposed to put that into that was not supposed to be part of trial. And for whatever reason, they let it happen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How much do you think fear and like religion and family expectations and the community pressure influence them?
Absolutely.
How much do you feel?
Absolutely. I mean, I think to varying degrees in who we're talking about. I think it depended. I think that, religion. I mean, if you've got Nathaniel Ingersoll, who's the deacon, who's highly religious, there's going to be a lot of that at play. And they strongly felt that the devil was trying to harm them. And there were a lot of stressors going on at the time. They had several skirmishes with the local tribes in the 1670s.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and there were settlements that had gotten burned to the ground. On both sides, there were villages, indigenous villages that got burned to the ground, and then also colonist settlements, and it was brutal. And they had a watchtower that was situated on Nathaniel's property, and someone would always be up in that watchtower to see if anything was about to happen. And there was a lot. Something that's very interesting that I saw when I was in Salem, I would spend a lot of time at night over by Charter Street Cemetery, and the trees would, at night when it was blustery, they would kind of blow like this, and there would be really crazy shadows everywhere.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I was just like, the more I saw that, the more I was like, oh my gosh, this must have been terrifying. There's no light, right? At this time, you had the milk. You could see the Milky Way back then. Right. There was, maybe there were a few lights, but it's really just moonlight that's lighting you at night. So if that bright moonlight is hitting those shadows and they're kind of chasing around, you start seeing weird stuff.
Yeah. When you don't understand what's going on,
when you don't understand it. And if there's like lunar eclipses, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that can also mess with them and make them think that something else is going on because they just don't have the scientific understanding of what they're looking at, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that absolutely played, and the stress of not having that charter. So here's the thing that was happening right before the trials took place. The trials themselves didn't actually start until Bridget Bishop's trial. Her trial started on June 2nd. They couldn't do it because they didn't have a charter. And without the charter, they couldn't run the courts. So there was actually a backup in the prisons of people that had not had their cases heard. And they started running out of room in the Salem jail and started to move people to Boston. And they were going to do their trials in Boston, and then they ended up bringing them back to Salem. And so there's this shuffling of people back and forth. And the Boston jail was even worse than the Salem jail, which the Salem jail is pretty bad. So,
yeah.
Jeez.
But all I'm thinking about is like going to church for 8 or 9 hours in that small space and how smelly it could be.
Oh, yeah. They weren't bathing. Our European ancestors were filthy people. I mean, the Native American, there's different, I refer to them as the Namkeg of the Massachusetts tribe in the books, but it's kind of like there's a bit of a debate about what exactly that tribe's name was, or that band of indigenous people was. But there were 22,000 of them when Roger Conant showed up. And within a few years, that number went down to about 650 because of smallpox and dysentery and all these horrible diseases that they brought with them.
Right.
And the indigenous people bathed every single day. Their hygiene systems were amazing, but they could not combat against all this crap that the Europeans brought with them.
All the bacteria, yeah.
Oh my God. And so a lot of what happened to those local initial tribes, it was disease. It wasn't war. It was just that they couldn't handle all the diseases that were coming in.
Yeah.
And so
their body didn't know how to fight it off.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And they didn't have medication or knowledge about the science behind it or anything like that.
And so it was just horrific what ended up happening. But yeah, so all of this stuff, it's just a big soup of crazy going on. And so yes, all those stressors didn't help, but it was very much also an opportunity to deal with past grudges and gripes and jealousies and people wanting things. Another piece of transcript that I found was in regards to George Jacobs, and my great aunt Sarah Ingresol, she was married to my great uncle Samuel, lived in Salem town. She was about 36 years old, and where they lived was, if you know Salem at all, this Ingresol strip of land was from Essex Street all the way down to the water, and then along what's now Daniel Street, but at the time it was called Ingresol Lane. And on the opposite side of Main Street was the Beetle Tavern. And George Jacobs' questioning happened in town at the Beetle Tavern. Might have been because he was not doing so well. He was infirmed. He actually had 2 crutches. And at some point after that testimony, my aunt finds George Jacobs' servant, who is Sarah Churchill, on the street, and she is very distraught. And Aunt Sarah goes up to her and is like, what's wrong? What can I help you with? And Churchill says that she was undone, that she had undone herself, that she had lied during the testimony. And my aunt is like, why would you do that? Why would you lie? And she says, that she was threatened. She never said who threatened her. But at the time, one of the Putnams wanted the political position that George Jacobs was holding. And so that might have been the reason why. So they were manipulating some of these women as well. It wasn't just, and tragically, they ended up perjuring themselves because they were threatened into doing that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Wow.
Do you know, there was always this, there was this thing that came out, I think when I was in high school, about how they thought the girls had some sort of poisoning. Did you find any kind
That
of
was debunked.
connection? It was debunked.
It was debunked because it doesn't make sense, because there would be a lot more people that would be affected by it. It wouldn't just be a few girls. They were all using,
everybody would have been eating the bread.
Yeah, they were all using the same stuff. They were all making bread from it. It just didn't make, so that got debunked. There's a lot of little things like that, little theories that people have that get debunked over time. I mean, and there's a lot of sometimes confusion. Bridget Bishop is repeatedly confused with Sarah Bishop. And it took a genealogist in 1981 to finally pull them apart and make it very clear that the bishops that were in the village were not the bishops that were in town. And he did that by finding their signatures. There were 3 male bishops in the village, senior, junior, and the third. All of them signed their names differently. Bridget Bishop's husband was referred to as the Sawyer. He was a lumberman. Lumbermen, they were buff dudes because they had to. There's these big saws that they would use, and she married well. Her second marriage not so good, but her third one was good. But he signed his name with an X, which interestingly was the same way Bridget signed her name with an X.
Oh wow!
So they were a lot of the people that came from England were not taught how to read and write. But the people that had been in Massachusetts, they passed a law, I think in the 1640s, that all the children should learn how to read and write. And so a lot of the people that had been there for a while, like the bishops out in the village, knew how to read and write and were able to sign their names. So there was a difference.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So
it's
wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's so hard to pull that history apart because it's so far in the past.
Yes.
Like you really have to do a lot of research to find that stuff.
Yes. I just lucked out because I had my genealogy records. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have made all those connections. And I've actually asked people in Salem at like the House of the Seven Gables and at the Salem Witch Museum, like, you guys know about their connection? Like, yeah, we know. I'm like, okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Because that would be weird.
I mean, connection.
Right. That's so funny.
Wow. So I know earlier in the episode, I talked to you guys about some certain secret shadow that I have. I have been thinking through the whole episode if I'm really going to say something just because, but I also have to be not, I guess, I don't know, how could I say this? Like, so interesting enough, me and Shelley have an interesting connection. And I myself done some genealogy, especially on my mom's side of the family, including her father. And there was a lot of information that came about when I did the genealogy. And then my daughter also did like a DNA test, which obviously came from Salem, Daniverse is what we want to call it. I am a descendant of the Putnam. My grandfather never liked talking about his family. We asked him, he'd always deflect. He did not have he had a very troublesome childhood just because of things in his life. But it is connected through my grandfather's grandma, and it goes all the way up from there. I found I'm direct descendant of Hannah Putnam, which is also one of the Edward Putnam, the deacon, as well as his father in that. So I guess kind of like, what does this say? You know, finding my own history and my own back to the Putnam family, you know, a name deeply connected. And Shelley was saying that we were the ones absolutely complained all the time. And we were also the ones, well, I mean, we were the ones too that, you know, got the wrath of pretty much
Your
everything.
family got the bad rap.
Yeah.
And my family should have as well. And there's a whole bunch. I mean, Nathaniel Ingresol was known as the father of the village.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he just was so well respected, and his father was so well respected. His Governor Endicott was at Richard Ingersoll's bedside when he died and was one of the witnesses to his will. So they were
crazy.
just so intricate or involved in the Salem government, and everyone just had a different viewpoint with them than the Putnams. And it's not fair. They both were just as damaging during the witch trials.
Yeah.
Both of them, I mean, dozens and dozens of people, most of the people that were executed were put on trial because of the Ingersolls and the Putnams.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that me doing these books, which are fun books, but have this history in it, I'm hoping that I want that to be out in the open. I don't think the Ingersoll should be hidden from that.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know,
and I know there was,
gosh,
there were family members back then, even afterwards, after everything had happened and everything was said and done, that actually came forward later in life and apologized and said, you know,
some of them did. Nathaniel never did.
Right. Nathaniel never did.
Never did. He and Hannah died in a shipwreck off the coast of Lynn, and they, for whatever reason, he felt like he had done the right thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was going on in his head. I can only look at the documents. So the interesting thing is that after Bridget Bishop's execution on June 10th, the Ingersoll men stopped filing complaints. I think her execution had a devastating effect on them. And you can see them pull back because they still had to go through the court proceedings because they already kind of got the ball rolling, and they couldn't unring the bell they rang.
Yeah.
So they still had to do that, but they're being very cagey about how they're doing testimony. Nathaniel, when he gets brought in to talk about his nephew Ben, who had died after Rebecca Nurse yelled at him for his pig getting in her yard, he doesn't accuse Rebecca. He just talks about Benjamin's condition before he died, and he never connects it to her. So here's the thing so Bridget Bishop was brought to Gallows Hill by herself. She was the only person that was by herself. Everyone else went in a group. And she was the first person ever executed in Salem. And executions back then were gruesome events. They were not, I think a lot of people think of a Wild West gallows, and then people get it wrong and talk about them being burned. Nobody was burned in Salem.
No.
But these were short rope drops.
Yeah.
They would have them walk up a ladder. They would hang the rope down, put it over them with a sack because they would hit it, and they would tie the women's legs together so their skirt wouldn't fly up. And then they would do something called the turning. And they would take the ladder and they would either shove it out from under them or they would turn it. And then the person would drop. So Bridget dropped. because she didn't have the body weight of a man, it took her longer to die. Men normally took about 15 to 20 minutes to die. Women, according to, not necessarily specifically for Bridget, but according to other instances, could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour to die.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It was horrific. And they basically strangled to death.
Yeah.
And it's horrifying. And so
is.
I think that had a profound effect on whoever went there. Nathaniel would have gone because he was a witness on her indictment. So he would have been there. The Putnams only file one more complaint after that date on July 1st. And then they stop. But for whatever reason, Ann Putnam Jr. and Mary Walcott keep going. They keep accusing people. They were step cousins. When Jonathan Walcott's first wife, Mary Sibley Walcott, died, he married Deliverance Putnam, who was Thomas Putnam's sister. So they had this connection that way. It's possible that Mary Walcott got kicked out of her father's house during this time. She was about 18 years old and might have been a little bit older. And the magistrates do something really crazy. They basically take them on a tour of other communities, particularly Andover. Interesting fact, a lot of people don't know, most of the accused people were from Andover, not from Salem.
Wow.
Even when you put Salem Town and Salem Village together, there's still more people that were accused in Andover. And there's this weird handoff that happens. The town really hates Anne and Mary showing up because they were kind of like just like hear whispers and they would just go start pointing at people.
Yeah.
And the town kind of runs them out and like, we don't want them here anymore. But then there's a bunch of young people that kind of take over after them. And it keeps going from July into August and September. And so they keep doing these accusations. So it's this weird thing that happens where all of a sudden, like the Salem people kind of drift off to the background. And then there's a whole new group that starts it up.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting part is like we are all focused on what happened during, 1692 and everything, but it still continued after that.
It kept going. The accusations kept going. The executions, thank God, stopped in late September. That last one was horrific. There were about 8 people that were executed at the same time. And the only reason why there weren't more is pretty much because they ran out of room in the cart that they used to take them up there.
Yeah.
And there were more people like Elizabeth Proctor who had been convicted. But they kind of they pull back, but they're still arresting people. And the problem was that when you were arrested, even if they dismissed your case, you still had to pay your jailing fees. You had to pay your jailer, your chains, your food. And people were scrambling to get money to pay these fees. Sometimes they were selling their things. Sheriff Corwin was seizing people's property. And when we're talking about property, we're talking about the goods within someone's house, their livestock, that kind of thing. You couldn't seize someone's land. That's not a thing. But we get it confused because when we, as modern people, hear property, we think of land and real estate, and that's not what it was. Property back then meant movable goods. But he would overtake what he was supposed to.
What he was owed.
What he was owed. And his family ended up having to pay back stuff because of what he did. And his grave was desecrated multiple times. They kept having to replace his headstone because people were, he was so hated afterward because of what he did.
Yeah.
This whole thing depressed the economy for years. Yeah. Because it wasn't just the people, because there were upwards of 200 people that were accused in the whole region. But people would leave their fields to go watch the questionings. And so people weren't taking care of their crops. They had a food shortage. There was people left, and so there were just homes and things that were abandoned. And it took a while for Salem to recover after all of this happened, and Boston, just the whole Massachusetts Bay Colony area.
Yeah. It's amazing how something like this can definitely, cause havoc in everything around them,
Absolutely.
and yeah, I'm so excited to to read your second book, and I wanted to thank you so much for all that you shared today. It is just so amazing, and the connection that we have is it's mind-boggling, and seriously, I truly believe universe brought us together for a reason. And I did want to say just real quick, and I know that I'm probably going to get some backlash for my secret out of the closet, but it is what it is. I can't
You
I
can't
guess I
undo
just
your
want to
genetic code. You
I
really
can't.
can't.
And I practice, I'm a medium, I do everything, but um that doesn't make me who I am. It
Right.
I feel bad for I really, from the heart, I want to take that moment and say to those who are accused, to those who are imprisoned, and tortured and executed, to the families who watch their loved ones suffer, and to you just I'm sorry. I felt responsible to say that. I don't know if anybody ever got that. I'm sure someone, if I remember right, she did eventually apologize later, but that still didn't change anything. And
Right.
I know I can't apologize for people who lived more than 3 centuries ago. I can't change what happened. I can't undo everything, but I want to acknowledge it. I want to remember it, and I can remember it. And you do that as well. You do
I do.
that.
I when I do interact with people, because I do post things about the witch trials periodically on my feed, and I like taking an effort and apologizing to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them are like, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, no, it's just polite. It is polite for us to acknowledge that our ancestor did something to their ancestors. And because those apologies didn't happen back then, I just feel it's polite to do it now.
Yeah.
And every time I am in Salem, I go to the Witch Trials Memorial by Charter Street Cemetery, and I touch each stone. I give them flowers, and I say hello to them. And it's just important for me to do that. And I say goodbye before I leave. And it's a little bit easier for me to go to that memorial. It is I went to the Gallows Hill Memorial the last year, and it was very difficult. That was way more difficult. There's just a energy there that's vastly different.
Yeah.
And there's a little stone edging between the sidewalk and then the actual entering the memorial itself. I could not cross over that. For the life of me, I could not cross over it. And I cried for about 20 minutes. I couldn't look at Bridget's stone. I finally was able to look at it after a while. But I think for them, it is important for them to feel us have those emotions.
Yeah.
If they are still kind of around. I don't know if they are, because they didn't actually believe in that. They believed that once you died, you moved on, and your spirit did not stay here. And I hope they aren't still here. I hope they are at rest, and they aren't I know people think that Bridget might show up. She liked her orchard. She might show up at the Lyceum and play pranks and stuff. There'll be some light flickering and little cans of bubbly and things that will blow up periodically during Halloween time, and we'll just go, that's Bridget.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
crazy.
she might,
Yeah.
but I just hope they're at rest and at peace now. And I hope they also feel our love. I adore Bridget. I have adopted her as an ancestor because I feel like you don't just have your actual blood ancestors, you also have ancestors that you get to adopt.
Yeah.
And she is so my adopted ancestor, and I adore her so much, and I have so much respect for her because she was a ballsy lady. She was just
She
awesome.
was.
Oh
She
my
was.
God. I wish I had been able to meet her because she was a fashionista. She liked wearing black when she wasn't supposed to. And
Yeah.
she had all these little things that she would do on her bodice that with colors and things. And she would barter and she would tell people, no, you don't talk about me like that. And she was just awesome. And I hope this gets to shine a different light on her
Yeah.
because
She
I feel
deserves
like
that.
she deserves that. And I feel like so much time we just kind of see them as a stone memorial and we don't see them as people and we don't see them beyond what happened to them in the worst moment of their life in 1692.
Yeah.
And I hope that this gets to shine not just the bad part that happened to her, but also some really special moments in her life too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Ginger, did you have anything?
I absolutely love that. I do think we always need to remember, like, you know, we call them the Salem witch trials, but also none of these women were witches. None of them practiced.
No.
They all were accused for
And men. There were men.
and yeah, there were men, and they were all accused for various reasons.
Yes.
Had nothing to do with witchcraft.
No.
And I think a lot of people don't pay very good
I have
respect
had
to
people
that fact.
argue with me on social media and say, how do you know they weren't witches? And I'm like, because my family accused them. And they kind of get a little startled when I say things like that. But I'm like, no, I know what my family did.
Yeah.
And you know, don't you dare call these women witches and evil people. They were not baneful people. They were not.
No.
They were innocent.
Yeah.
So,
Well, guys, I think that is the end of our show. I definitely would be honored to have Shelley back on and we can continue our conversation and some of the new stuff that I found out about my family as well.
We have more books to talk about.
We have more books to talk about.
We should talk about the book after it comes out when I can actually talk about it.
Yeah, where can we find your book really fast?
It's everywhere right now. So you can go to beckettcoven.com and find the links on there. They're also on my socials, but it's at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, Google Play, Apple. It's all over the place. So there's paperback copy. I got paperback copy right back here. And then the ebook copy as well.
Yeah. And then they can find you on any social media platform.
Social media, I'm pretty much all over. I'm at Beckett Coven, and it's 2 T's with the Beckett. And yeah, it's really easy to find me. And if you type in Beckett Coven at the moment on Google, it's going to come up. It comes up pretty fast, so you can find it easy. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, guys, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jessy. Always do this to her. Right? Oh, guys, thank you so much for stepping beyond the veil with us tonight. And until we meet again, keep your candles burning, keep your questioning what you hear in the darkness, and remember, some stories are never truly die. Somewhere in the shadows, there is still whispering. Thanks, guys.
Bye.